I feel that with cacao as well. There's the dark and the light. And a lot of times I hear a lot of people that have a hard time with their gut with cacao in the beginning. Like cacao completely healed my gut, but it was painful for a while. And it's done a lot of work with my womb, and it's done unspeakable work with my heart and with just the way I operate and like my embodiment as a human. But it hasn't all been this gentle, loving, like
Mm.
eating chocolate kind of feeling. It's been work.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Travel Podcast. We are welcoming you to the jungle of Mexico, the lush greenery and the tropical moist air, hoping that you can feel that already. The call of the plants and the relationship with the unseen is what we are here to explore today with my amazing guest, Helia Aurora. Helia is the founder and visionary heart and mind behind Cacao del Sol. She is a cacao steward and facilitator, a lucid dreaming guide, a Reiki master and teacher, and Kundalini Tantra yoga teacher. She serves as a channel and ceremonialist to the divine, guiding others into energetic alignment with themselves and the earth. She hosts retreats with powerful potential of transformation. Buenos días y bienvenida, Helia. I'm so happy to have you and to have this conversation that we've been awaited for long. So welcome.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome and buen dia. I'm excited to meet you.
Yeah. Tell us where you're tuning in from today.
Well, I'm currently in Playa del Carmen of the Riviera Maya. I just moved from Palenque about a month ago. So I'm in a new jungle, a new Mayan land, but I still feel very connected to that Mayan prayer.
It's beautiful. So you told me that you moved to Mexico about 3.5 years ago. What is the sacred site or the sacred medicine that this land opened you up to?
That's a great question. I just hit my 4-year mark in Mexico.
Yay!
Like for such a number of stability and groundedness. And so honestly, the first thing that I noticed as soon as I got to Mexico was that I was plugged into the earth. It felt like something finally plugged me in. And before, I always felt very connected to the earth and connected to nature. And after my journey through India and Nepal, I felt that I was trying to transcend and trying to like go somewhere, trying to like move my energy up and out of the earth plane. And when I got to Mexico, I learned the descent, and like the plants started talking to me, and the ancestors came through, and all the things that I felt I was lacking in this earth plane really started to settle into place. So I think it's the gridding of the land here is a little bit more open and available. It's easier. It's not hidden in plain sight like most places.
It almost sounds like there's a lot of, stories that are living in the earth. So tell us a little bit about what ancient stories were there for you to be uncovered.
Oh, wow. There's so many. I started my journey in Tepoztlan, where there is like the ancient Aztec and the Tolteca traditions, Mexica. And so there was a lot of learning of the deities like Tlaloc and all of the deities that work with the rain and with the harvest. And there's, I think the most prevalent story that I have from that land is when I started working with cacao, I didn't know that Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, which is Kukulkan in Mayan, that it's like this dragon, that he brought cacao from the stars, actually Venus, to the earth to heal the heart of humanity. And I was living in Amatlan de Quetzalcoatl, which was the birthplace of this feathered serpent. And so it really plugged me into the cosmology of this story of the ancients that brought this food of the gods to the earth. So I feel like that's like the big one. And there's so many there's so many stories with the Mayan, and I've been in some really deep channeling places in Palenque. So I don't know, dragon codes and so many interesting unfoldings have happened there.
You know, one thing that comes to me because you spoke that to the fact that you were actually like coming from India and like these higher planes where it also occurs to me that there is the connection to the cosmos is very easy, and now you are kind of like on the opposite grid, but there is still these threads how even the plants and some of the plants that we have on the earth and that we can work with as these master plants are not actually from here. So it's beautiful that I didn't know that it was Quetzalcoatl like bringing cacao and that it was from Venus. That is, wow, that's amazing.
I've connected that it was with Venus because in Mexico, when we call in the directions for ceremony, the direction of the east, they say the morning star is Quetzalcoatl. And so that is Venus. And so I'm like, oh, and
Oh.
oh, it's such a heart plant. It's like it is that embodiment of both the duality, the light and the dark of Venus, I feel.
Mm. So did you connect with cacao on a deeper level through the Mayan grid?
Yes. When I moved to Palenque, I actually moved because I wanted to be close to the cacao trees and the plants and learn from the ancient traditions. So when I got to Palenque, I got to meet some Mayan Chol people. They live up in the communities by the archaeological zone. And I got to be with the land and meet the cacao trees and harvest some fruit with them. And then I was making my cacao paste up there. And so I learned some of the things that they're working with now in their ancestry because the Mayans have kind of, they've been given Christianity and Catholicism. And so they kind of have merged both of their traditions, but they've kind of let go of the idea of there being many gods and now that there's one God. And it's very interesting because it's like this hybrid idea of who they are now compared to like who their ancestors were. But it's very interesting the way that they're working with cacao up there. They do big ceremonies where they mix cacao into these giant like vats and they like pour it into the water to ask for the rain to come and for the harvest to come. But it's like married with this Catholicism where they are lighting these candles and they're carrying a cross. And so they have both. They're talking to Chak, which is the rain god. It's the same as Tlaloc in Aztec, but for Mayans it's Chak. And then they're also working with Jesus and or Yeshua or however they perceive him there.
Hi, radiant woman. Let me ask you something. Do you feel the pull to walk where the earth still remembers so you can remember why you came here? You came to anchor light, to awaken codes, to activate truth and all that your soul left for you to remember. These aren't just travels. This is deep transformation. This is soul work. And it will change how you show up in every part of your life. That's why I created these sacred travel experiences for women like you who lead with the heart, live with purpose, and long for a deeper connection to self and spirit. In the south of France, this May, you'll walk into the cave of the Her Temple, the footsteps of Mary Magdalene, activating timelines of Sophia consciousness, reclaiming power, voice, and wisdom as the triple flame alchemy within. In the Valley of Light in Switzerland over the summer solstice this June, you'll get to embody your sovereign queen archetype, activating light codes to merge your divine feminine self with your human self to create and guide consciously and in full soul alignment. And in Egypt this December, you reconnect with your ancient body technology, the Merkaba. anchor in crystalline wisdom into the Akashic field of the earth and get to experience powerful initiations in the pyramids and temples. These are living portals, and you are the key. So which portal are you choosing? If your heart is vibrating, if you feel a call in your bones, then this is for you. It is time, sister. Check the link in the show notes or go to soulwisdom.ch, sacred travel. Let's walk this path together. It's fascinating. You know, when I was in the Cook Islands last October, and it was my first connection point with the Maori culture, I found the same. Like, Christianity has made their way to that remote islands like so strongly. And at the same time, you find these nature-based rituals, this nature-based belief that is still so intertwined with the daily lives. And it's beautiful to see how both can coexist, because I feel that ultimately also the teachings of Jesus in its original way were teachings of the heart, right? And so also like bringing what you said about the cacao being a plant of to open the heart of humanity, like it all comes back to that center point in a way. So I'm curious, what does it mean for you, or how have you learned to actually be a steward of the plant that is not only a plant, but it's a medicine, right?
Okay, the how. I would say to be a steward of cacao is to be a keeper of her stories and a sharer of her mysteries. And for me, cacao is it's a mystery school of its own. It's very holistic. It works with the mind, it works with the body, it works with the spirit. And then there's this ancient cosmology as well as these newer sciences. And it really merges and marries all of our existence. It's like this very unified. I call it like a little portal between worlds. And the Mayans worked with it, life, death, rebirth, the three cycles within the cacao. And so I feel like for me, I'm it comes to me in my dreams. It tells me how I'm going to work with it. It told me that I was going to teach people how to serve cacao, and had so much resistance to it. And she comes into my dreams all the time with little tips of what to do, what not to do. And so I feel like the way that I steward with cacao is to just keep honoring the plant as a plant medicine. I really see cacao as a plant medicine more than anything else. And how can I best be a vessel to share that medicine?
Mm. Mm. That's beautiful. And how would you say has, really like a learning from, of course, the plant, but also these ancient people who have trained and worked with this medicine for decades? How is that different from, I'm just, thinking there is, in the Western world, I would say it's become kind of like a hip thing in a way to do cacao ceremonies. And I feel there's also a lot of people out there who do that without the necessary training and maybe approach of the humble respect for the plant and the tradition that is behind. So I'm just curious how you see that, and having trained with all that knowledge in the background.
I feel my heart tells me cacao is for everyone. And so we all start somewhere, and I feel like it's our duty when we decide to take on a stewarding role or a sharing role to be in responsibility, be in reciprocity with that plant and with that spirit. And if we're not doing the work to properly open the space or to honor the land and the traditions, cacao is going to reflect that. I feel like everything's perfect and we all have our own learning methods, but I do find that it could be counterproductive when people are hosting and sharing medicines without knowing how to open a sacred space and close a sacred space and really being connected themselves to the medicine. I feel like that attunement of like getting to know the plant spirit that you're working with before sharing it with others and like being on that deep journey of like, how is this going to alchemize my life before sharing it? I feel like that's more important almost than needing to know like the ancestral lineages and these ancient things, because that'll all come the more that you open to the plant. It is a mystery school. So the more that you step in with your relationship, the more will come. And there's so many lineages and ideas and practices and cultures that have worked with cacao, and they're all so different. And so I feel like our personal relationship with the plant or with whatever we're working with is most important. Is like, I need to develop a relationship with this entity, being, with the spirit, and see where it takes me, see what she shows me, or he, because cacao is, it's both masculine and feminine and child.
That is interesting. I mean, I've heard so many people speak about cacao as a mother plant in the way of a she, but then, of course, everything like holds the polarities. But now you bring in the Trinity. So I'm curious about the story behind that.
Okay, so cacao is actually a hermaphroditic plant. Like when you go down to its tree, it self pollinates. Well, there's a little tiny fly that goes in. It's called a cacao or chocolate midge, and it flies in this tiny little flower. It's like 1 to 2 centimeters. And so the plant itself doesn't have masculine or feminine. It's changes in its lifespan. But then if you look at the actual pasta de cacao, the cacao paste it's like the bean that's been ground and roasted. So what happens is whenever you grind it, the oils and the fats within, which is the feminine, merge with the theobromine, like the physical, the non-fats, and that's the masculine, like that power, that energy, the strongness. And so the fat, the cacao fat, is nurturing, it's hydrating. And so when they're married together, you have both the masculine and the feminine, which allows that third part, the child, to come through. And so that's how I see cacao. It could be masculine, feminine, or embody the child.
I love that. I've never heard, somebody speak about that. So thank you for sharing.
Of course, there's so many schools of thought.
And, also the way that you approach it, I feel it's so multi-layered because you weave in your lucid dreaming, and then there is also the places that you go to. So it feels like it's really like reaching from the very grounded, and then from that space opening up to everything that wants to come. Is that a natural process that evolved, or how did you find out about that layering?
Well, I feel like I'm the type of person that likes to know all of the intricacies of things. And I wasn't expecting to land in the middle of the Mayan underworld. I wasn't expecting to be like literally taken down into the deepest dimensions of the earth to learn. And so I feel like my brain and the way that my spirit works is I alchemize a lot of things. I'm like synergizing, I'm like pulling things together. And that's just, I think, the way that my brain works, because I was originally interested in neurology and neurobiology and like studying the brain. And so like cacao, that releases dopamine and serotonin and anandamide and all of these neurotransmitters in the brain, and the way that it changes our actual physiology and opens the literal brain and the heart to allow more oxygen in. I feel like that aspect and the superfoods aspect was that first entryway and that first gate. And then I realized, wow, cacao is so much more than a superfood. It's beyond that. It has culture, and it has shape, it has body. There's gods and deities and spirits associated with cacao. And so my mission has been going to different lands and learning how people are working with the cacao there and seeing what I can learn from them and just absorb through their codes and the land's codes. And I want to travel to all these different places, Puerto Rico and Africa and all the places that grow cacao, and learn where and how people are working with it there, because it's very different everywhere.
How do you feel that the plant that has grown on a specific land is holding and transmitting the codes?
A lot is the stewards. I would say a lot is the stewards, because I was going to say, I think cacao is just, or plants, they connect with us and their mission is to be shared. Their mission is to be utilized in their divine gift. They have a divine purpose here on the planet too. And there was this moment where coffee was taking over and cacao almost became like or almost extinct. Like, I don't know if that's the right word, but it was declining, the amount of plants. A lot of people were getting rid of their cacao farms and changing them into coffee plantations because of the climate shifting. And I know that coffee grows in a different region, but with the shifting, it's changed a lot in the cacao space. But all of these people are reawakening to these ancient cultures and the medicine of cacao. So I feel like the stewards now are coming in to reawaken the divine agenda of cacao, which is to restore the heart of humanity and to connect us with the planet and the
The
stars.
divine agenda. Wow.
I don't know. That was just what was like the divine agenda.
So you said the connection to, yeah, the cosmos and the stars. And how was that for you that you lived close to Palenque, which is a very, very powerful site? So I can imagine that just like, yeah, being constantly in the whereabouts of these energies, there's a lot happening. So how did that affect you?
Palenque was a training ground for me. I felt like the psychic space there and the energy of the underworld. I heard that there's a Mayan civilization living beneath your feet. And I felt like the ancients were still alive underneath me. I felt dragons. I actually dreamt lucidly of a dragon that was stirring in the crust of the earth the first night I got there. There was an earthquake the moment I set up my
Oh,
altar.
wow.
And that's the only time I ever had felt an earthquake. I think it was actually my first one. And that night I went to sleep, and in my dream state, it was like I was in bed and I saw a dragon underneath the earth right where I was, and it was like curling from its sleep. And so Palenque had this, I was really in the whims of nature. I was in the whims of whatever the nature was doing. Then we would have huge storms, and I would see like the clouds and the lightning roll through, and I was connecting with Kwalak, which is Chak a lot, which is the rain god. And I would talk to him and I would pray to him. And I felt like he responded to me a lot. And it became this place where sometimes the weather and the patterns of the grid would shut down all electricity for 2 weeks. And I had to be like, okay, well, this is where I am. And the land was teaching me things. It was like, you don't need distractions right now. Like, everything is going to still be there when you get back. And so I feel like Palenque allowed me to kind of drop my pre notions of what I believed reality in the world to be. And it really was this force that was bigger than anything I had ever walked with in my life.
So you mentioned the underworld a couple of times already. Can you elaborate a little bit on that one?
Okay, so behind you is this beautiful archaeological site, Palenque. I live like 2 kilometers from it. It was amazing. But if you look like all around, there's these mountains and these hills, and it's forever expansive. That is all archaeological sites that have been eaten by the jungle. Actually, I believe only 3 to 5% has been excavated and uncovered. And so the rest of it is quite literally underground in these networks. And there's tombs and there's all kinds of things. And I'm going to bring it back to cacao. I know that we weren't originally going to talk about cacao, but she's making her appearance. Cacao, King Cacao, which was the ruler of Palenque, which was Lacamha in the time of the Mayans, the town of the Great Waters, the city of Great Waters. And I think he ruled for between 60 and 70 years. And when he was the ruler and the leader, he had a divine consort, the Red Queen. And so it was like this balance of masculine and feminine. And they say that it was a time of great peace and of great love. And cacao was depicted on his tomb multiple times. And one of those depictions was his mom as a cacao tree. And they believed that the cacao tree was an actual portal into the underworld. And so they would go to the cacao tree to enter into the underworld. And so I think just the cacao holds this ability to navigate the stars and the depth because it's also a shade plant. And so it needs other plants to kind of shade it from the sun. So it allows us to do that shadow work with love and like to dive into the depths, into the grief, into the stories. So it can take us into our own underworld. But yes, Palenque was very much an underworld. I was once guided in this channeled space to start liberating souls that were stuck in the earth there. It was like this is going to sound crazy, but I was picking up on these like control groups that were harnessing the land there now to utilize for whatever their agenda is. I'm not sure what it is. But I was told that they were suppressing the souls in the earth and like utilizing them. And so I was probably 30 minutes to an hour with one of my clients. I was being guided to start liberating these souls from the earth. And it's like has this like masculine imprint on it, and like the feminine energy needed to like breathe in the land. So it's very interesting. It was dark there and twisted and so much duality, but also so magical and so light and so much. I'm thinking of the giant macaws that would fly by, and yeah, it's such. I don't even have words for it fully. It's such a profound exchange with the land.
And now that you have moved on to where you are now at the Mayan Riviera, how different does it feel?
Well, I will say when I first got here, I cried for like the first 2 weeks. I was like, what did I do? I left my soul home. I never felt more connected to a land. But I'm getting it here. Being in the cenotes here and going to the archaeological zone, I finally went yesterday to an ancient Mayan site, allows me to connect more to that prayer here again. And I have my plant medicine family lives here. Juan Carlos Temenchi, he's a shaman from Peru. He lives close, and so I've got to hang out with him and his partner, which works with Rose. She's a rose priestess. She does rose ceremonies. And so I've been getting to connect with the plants, and I really need that connection to the plants in the land in order to start understanding the codes that this land has to offer. I'm still tapping into it. I'm still breathing into this Mayan civilization because I feel like here it's been so much more. There's so much more tourism, and it's all still here and it's all still powerful, but there's like this Disney stamp on it almost. And it it feels like I have to do some work to really get into the past the layers of what our colonization and all of that has created on the land. In Palenque, it felt more open. Like, does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yes. I feel like it's it's an uncovering process for me here, and I'm still stepping into it.
Yeah, it's just trying to get a hold of it, because on the one hand side, I do feel that there is these sites where, as you say, there is that the Disney or the tourism stamp, but then there is also other places that might be much more hidden, and you just have to find them or to be guided to them, and then it's kind of like the veil has lifted and they're there, but they're not in plain sight in a way.
Yes, I want to share on that. I have a really dear friend here who does he does tours, and it's not his tours really connect you to the land. It connects you to the culture. And yesterday we went on like this adventure out into the Yucatan, which is the state next to us. It was about 2 hours. And we went to this cave, this underground cenote, that we were the only ones there, me and two friends. And it was like walking into the womb of the earth. And it was out of no one, I don't feel like many people know about some of these places. And it felt that way. It felt pristine. I was like, what ancient beings are living in this water? It felt like maybe a dragon would come up at one point, and it was like that respect that you feel that's almost like fear. It's like I'm swimming in waters that are pristine and untouched by a lot of what is happening today. And so that was like a moment of like, wow, this is very profound. And there's lots of that here. It's just more of you have to get out and find it or know someone that has access points.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it also feels a lot more feminine to what you were sharing before. So it feels like there is the dance of the polarities again.
It's definitely more feminine energy here, I can feel, because we're right on the ocean, and the waters here are they like make pools in like bellies of the earth where like Palenque was waterfalls and rivers, and not as much of this like conjure sites of like deep water.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I just want to, reflect on what you said. I don't remember your exact wording, but when, like, overall you were speaking, about cacao and how it's kind of like this mirror, and it brings you deeper into the connection with the land. And it's something that I've learned for myself as well, and that I would want to offer, also on the tours that I'm leading, is that really part of the preparation when you go to a land is working with the inherent plants as teachers of the mystery unfolding. I think that's because you use the word mystery school. And so I'm just curious what, yeah, you would have to share on that.
Mm, I feel like the the plants in general are consciousness. Just like all of the earth is one living, breathing organism, as well as all of these fragments of consciousness that run through the land. I feel like the plants, really the native plants, are really important for us to connect to because they have keys. I feel like a plant is almost a key that unlocks things in our consciousness, in our hearts, and our bodies. And like I think a lot in Europe, it's really a lot of herbs, right? You guys have this magic connection with the herbal world, and everywhere on the earth there's like this different connection to the plants. And I feel like it also gives you an insight to how the people grew up in the languages they spoke before, like the ancient times, because plants were their everything. They communicated with nature and the stars and the earth, and they didn't have GPS. They didn't have they didn't
The
have
stars.
yeah, their GPS was the stars, and sitting and listening and feeling the wind and feeling these things. So I feel like plants, when we work with the plants, they can allow us to start that communication beyond the other than human world, because there is an other than human world that's constantly communicating, but it's like we can't hear it all the time unless we take a moment to receive the gifts of nature and that reciprocity.
Yeah. 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 That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
you
even
also,
taking apple and putting it on your skin after getting a sunburn, it doesn't even have to be like ingesting.
you mean for the cacao, especially?
Oh, just in general with like plants in an area. But yes, you can
Yeah.
also with cacao without ingesting it. You can just call upon the spirit as well. I do that often.
For such a long time, I could not do cacao. And it was kind of like to the point where I didn't even want to connect because she was too strong for me. Like she pulled out everything. And I would, because especially in a training that I was, they would do, or we would do cacao very often, but I couldn't. And so that was like my main thing to connect in the spirit world. And it's taken me years to be able to ingest her.
Wow, that's really powerful. I hear that with a few people that the was it a physical thing or was it the energetic?
Yes. Well, I would say both, but it was a real physical experience for me. I would feel that, there's this fun saying in German. I don't know if that exists in English too, but it's when you when you feel really shit. There is this saying that like you feel like somebody kind of like dragged you through the cacao. I don't, and that's how I felt. I felt like I had drunken the whole night, and I had such a bad hangover, and my head was hurting, and I just felt super dry. And then, yeah, I just stopped. Like even just tiny doses would give me that. And I was like, okay, well, you're for another time. Now I can do it, but still, like in homeopathic, what is that? Homeopathic dosages. But yeah.
Wow, that's really thank you for sharing that. I feel like the medicines, they work differently with each person as well. And cacao is one of those things that sometimes I don't want to drink. Sometimes I'm like, I need like a month or two of integrating this medicine because it's really strong. And if I'm holding a bunch of containers where I'm drinking cacao with ceremony, I'm like, oh no, I have to drink cacao again tonight. But it allows me to like, and I'm not saying that because cacao, I mean, it's delicious and it's powerful, but it opens so much. It can make us really vulnerable because it's opening like physically opening the vessels and opening the heart and opening the mind. And sometimes that expansion energy is really uncomfortable for the being when it's needing to like pull in. And so there's a duality with all things. And I feel that with cacao as well. There's that the dark and the light. And a lot of times I hear a lot of people that have a hard time with their gut with cacao in the beginning. Like cacao completely healed my gut, but it was painful for a while. And it's done a lot of work with my womb and it's done unspeakable work with my heart and with just the way I operate and like my embodiment as a human. But it hasn't all been this gentle, loving, like
Mm.
eating chocolate kind of feeling. It's been work.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I definitely feel that.
It's important, I feel, because sometimes we can paint these things as like being purely like love and light, and it is, and also it's a tool of transformation. It's the Ouroboros. It's the full cycle. You've got to you've got to be with the fullness of it in order to receive the fullness of it, and that can be a lot.
Yeah, and just also coming back to the underworld, it just really feels like She's a plant to help you navigate the underworld in an expansive way.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
Oh.
really interesting. Even the Mayans, they worked with cacao. It was basically the center of all of their ceremonies and even their like political gatherings. They always had cacao. And sometimes it wasn't to drink, it was like trading beans or baptizing a baby. But they used cacao when people would pass or be sacrificed to soothe the heart before. And to also, they would leave offerings of cacao in vessels in the tombs. They carbon dated and found theobromine, which is only found in cacao, in these vessels. So they knew that they were giving cacao to souls to help them get to the underworld. It's like the speculation. It's like it's it's a portal. It's like a ticket. It could take you to many places. So yeah, I just wanted to bring it back to that underworld of like it was really revered. And I will drink cacao. When my dad passed and when my friend's grandpa passed, we would sit in cacao ceremony and we would talk to the cacao and ask to help the soul transcend. And so we were working with cacao to open that energetic space of transcendence for our loved ones as well. And I find cacao could be really powerful for that. And putting beans in a, whenever you're burying someone or even a pet, like, yeah, I love to offer cacao or even pouring some on the land. The earth remembers. And so I feel like our souls also are part of that remembrance.
That's a beautiful, yeah, phrase to remember. The earth remembers. Thank you. Let's go from the underworld, kind of like straight up, because you
Yeah.
also mentioned, you mentioned a couple of times the star beings and the wisdom of the stars. So I'm curious to hear your insights while visiting the land or even in dream journeys or cacao ceremonies, what your insights have been.
Wow. I feel like the star beings are everywhere. They're here with us. They're in human form. They're in light form. They're everywhere. And I just met. This is kind of a side tangent, but I was just with a friend the other day in town, and we were given a ride by this woman that had like this almost looked like a sequined spacesuit on, and we got in the back of her car, and my friend was like, "Not, they're not humans. We're riding with aliens." And I was like, and we got out, and they like took us to eat, and I'm sitting next to this woman, and this woman says, "I do healing work too, but I I send messages through humanity, and I dress like an alien on my podcast." And she was like, "I've been visited." And she was telling me all these times that she was visited. And I looked at my friend and I was like, "You're right. She's not human at all." And that night when we went back to an Airbnb that we were renting, this light, we were sitting there talking, having a really deep conversation on the porch. And this white light like gushed in from the trees and down, and then it went back. And we were in the middle of this conversation. We continued, and I said, "Did you see that?" And he was like, "Yeah, I was going to ask if you saw it." And it felt like we were visited in that moment. And we weren't even, I mean, we were at a sacred site. We were in the Mayan jungle at a hotel, but I was connecting with the land before. And I was like, I want to acknowledge that this is like sacred Mayan land. And I feel like I've connected a lot with those star beings in Tepoztlan, like that energy of the mountains. It felt like a landing space for them, and they would come into my dreams. I would channel with them a lot. It was very, very powerful and profound. In Palenque, there was also that energy, but I felt more like of the domain of the dragons, where we're really like working that land. But I did see something one night. I walked out of my apartment randomly out of nowhere, and I looked up at the sky, and right above the building next to me, this it looked like a meteor came in, but not it was very close. It was like at the roof level of this building. And I was like, what was that? I couldn't find anything after. So for me, I feel like they're always coming in and communicating and
Yeah.
sharing. It's just the willingness to see differently.
Yeah. 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 Wow.
So I was curious what your connection is with the star beings where you're at.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that question. So when you ask like where I'm at now, I have the strongest connection the closer I go to the mountains. So there is a place that is about 2 hours from me. It's called the Valley of the Light. It's in Switzerland. And that's where kind of like I get my connection. It's like my command and control in a way. Because I literally feel whenever I go up there, it's like a light body activation. And I've had strong connections to the Pleiades and also Sirius, and it very much also feels like a portal for earth travel, but also astral travel in a way. Yeah, and then to me, I have a very strong connection with Orion. So, and yeah, the connection to the pyramids, and this is kind of like my North Star. So whenever I I look up, like this is my first point of orientation, and it's like, okay, I can see you. We're good. Yeah.
So you're connecting with the actual stars through being with the mountains.
It's, when you ask me like where I'm at here, I would say it's the mountains. The strongest connection I've had was in Egypt, and there's a couple of locations there. The one story or one memory I have very vividly is the Osirian, which is an ancient temple dedicated to Osiris, and it's these megalithic structures, and there is a flower of life imprint. Some people say it's laser, whatever, kind of like alien thing. There's this flower of life. Nobody really knows how it got there, but it's there, very prominent. And there is this underground, it's not a cave, it's a structure that kind of like pulls you into the earth, and it's all sand. And I don't know how long I was in there, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour, but to me, it really felt like light years. It was like if I was transported straight up to Orion. And that was such a strange, like also out of body yet body experience that for the past, the next 3 days in a row, I felt like my whole plane of existence was like that. Like I was walking around feeling dizzy because I felt like I had been, on literally like on a different dimension and planet.
That's powerful.
That was really powerful. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's
Disturbing too.
Sorry. Do you think there's a correlation between temples and mountains in general, like, and the star beings? Because I feel that I connect more with star beings and mountainous regions. But I don't.
It's super interesting. There's another episode actually with Gene Ang where because he does these crazy tours, like on these elevated heights in the Tibetan mountains and Bhutan and everywhere. And we were speaking about how these heightened altitude also kind of like mirrors a heightened state of consciousness, or like transcending the planes in a way. And to me, I haven't fully explored that, but there's definitely a truth that I feel with that. And also here, when I connect to the mountains, a lot of the mountains to me, I know you were asking for the temples, but to me, it's more like this is pyramids. And there are some mountains, like specific mountains, where I'm like, this is not a mountain, this is a pyramid. Yeah. To be
I feel like
discovered.
that in all places, like all of the mountains of Palenque, they have actually done the imagery to see that they're not actually mountains, they're structures under there. So I feel like there's probably a lot more on Earth than we're aware of.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I love to say that I personally feel that, especially when it comes to pyramids, there's going to be a lot more pyramids making themselves known in the next couple of years. I feel it's a whole like consciousness, a pyramid consciousness that is coming alive.
I just got chilled. Yeah, I feel that.
So, what is your experience with these pyramid structures in Palenque?
Wow, they were so magical. I would connect more with the ones that were less toured, if that makes sense. The ones that were you have to like go into the back of the park and like go through this pilgrimage, and I always leave offerings and bring like tobacco for the earth, and I ask a lot of permissions, and I feel like the more that I'm humbly walking with the earth and asking, the earth will start opening and showing me things. And so in Palenque, I felt that when I was going to the archaeological zone, I needed to be in the right mindset, and that it was like a sacred pilgrimage for me to go on. I wasn't going to go look and do that superficial tour, but more of like I want to feel the land and feel the beings here. And so I feel like they were powerful. This one time my friend Emily, she was living with me, and we went and we were connecting with these temples, and when we went back, so many weird things were happening at the house. Like it started storming. The house felt like it was rumbling. And in her channeled space, she saw that a dragon came home with us. It was
Oh,
like around the house. And we felt like it wanted to hang out with us, like it was recognized. And so I felt like when I went to the temples there, sometimes I could come back with something if I wasn't careful. Like, oh, this woman's connecting with us. Let's go see what she's into. I think that curiosity goes on both sides. Like, as much as we're curious, they're also curious. And I find that really interesting. And I had a dream maybe a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure what temples they were. I've had a dream with a few temples and entering into them. And in this dream, I was camping right outside of the temple. And the next day, I was going to be sleeping inside, which was like not something that happens. And I was waiting for my family to arrive. And my older brother, was like walking in this place with giant stones, kind of almost like a Stonehenge kind of energy. And I walked there and he's like, I found this place that is like restricted. They're trying to hide it from us for some reason. And as soon as I walked in, I said, I think you just found a portal to the underworld. And there's that underworld. I was like, I think you could enter into like the halls of Amentes or something here. And then I woke up. But there's something more. There's something more about these temples that I think that any of us are really aware of yet. I think they're showing themselves.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. Wow. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on, but you truly, truly feel that the audience needs to know this?
Okay, I do want to share one thing, because when you were doing the beautiful grounding meditation when we entered, when the codes were coming through of the land, this memory right when I was leaving Palenque. So I have a really dear friend there that is Mayan, and they're direct descendants of the Mayans. And we had this deep connection where I felt like we were maybe family in another life. And I think that's why it was so hard for me to leave. I was sitting in a friend's car one day, and I had this vision where I saw all of the Mayans in the area, because there's quite a few. And it felt like it was the same Mayans from over 2,000 years ago that just keep reincarnating onto the same land to protect the grid there and to protect the earth. And it felt like I had left. It really felt like I was there at one point and I left, and it was my first time returning. And like that leaving, it felt like I was leaving them again. And it was really hard. But I feel like just to respect the indigenous cultures when we travel, and to do our best to, instead of hiring a tour agency or something big and commercial, to see if we can connect more with the locals of the area and their wisdoms and their magic, because they have that ancient connection. I really felt like that whole community was just the Mayans reborn over and over and over into the same land. And yeah, I felt like that really wanted to be shared, is how important it is to reconnect to those local communities.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. And I feel I want to give a little shout out, and anybody who is intrigued now to visit, places in Mexico that we have spoken about, or maybe not spoken about, I'll redirect you to Helia, and she accesses her network of Mayan grid keepers. It's important to honor, these lineages and the keepers of the real deal, I want to say. Yeah, amazing. Okay, let us know how people can work with you.
I feel like the easiest way to find me is Lucidly, Lucidly, Helia, Helia, at on Instagram, Lucidly Helia. I also have a website, cacaodelsol.co. And that's a good way to, there's some information about cacao. And there's also a really cool meditation a friend of mine did that goes through the archaeological zone of Palenque. He works with cacao as well, and he recorded nature sounds, and he's done like a visual meditation that's like free on there. So if you want to like go into a little guided journey, there's resources, more information. So that's how you can find me.
Sounds like a beautiful experience.
It's so beautiful.
Well, Helia, thank you so much. That has been such a juicy, fruitful conversation. It is already early evening, but I feel I want to have some cacao now. So I'll go and prepare. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been a real, real pleasure and joy to have you.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your cacao. I'm going to make some too.
Opening the hearts. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. And as always, stay curious and continue to escape the ordinary. I'll see you next time.